Hello and welcome to the podquest. I say podquest because I am on a journey to learn everything you want to know about game dev, but never dared to ask. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Holger. Holger, tell us who you are and what you do.
Hi everyone, my name is Holger. I'm a lead UX designer at Wooga in Berlin, Germany, and I've been making games for a lot of years already. Like Oscar, you've been in the business longer than I am, a little bit, but yeah, I'm so happy to meet up with you again and talk about UX because game UX is like my most favorite topic to talk about.
And I think it's really important because I think that it's very easy for people like me who think of themselves as designers to think that that's game UX is part of our bag, and it is to an extent. But I think that it's also important to think about how many different kinds of design go into making of a game. Now, I mean, from my point of view, I'm the strategic thinker. I'm the kind of where does it all fit together? How does the glue work? And I'm obviously going to end up thinking about the money and how we can make enough money to be able to afford the fantastic, talented people we have on the team so we can keep making the game. Now, obviously, level designers come in at a different angle, gameplay designers, a different angle. What is it that makes a UX designer in a game?
So, as a UX designer in a studio working on a game, that's an interesting topic because, as you said, everyone working on a game, working on this piece of entertainment for someone out there who is supposed to dive into this world and have fun playing this game, or be scared playing this game, or just grow and learn. What you can experience so much once you get in touch with games, and what you sort of need to do in a position of a UX designer is building a bridge between the developers, right, the artists, the designers, and the people that will actually play this game. So your audience, basically. And why is this so important? Because when you're working on a game, like you're in the box, right? You talk about things in technical terms. You already think about the structure of how the flow should be, how the economy will work, and so on and so forth, while artists can focus on character design and whatnot. And ultimately, this all needs to be translated to a player who will not have the benefit of having you in the room when she starts playing this game and needs to figure things out, and will have so many different questions and so many different things to expect, that the earliest you go out there with whatever idea you have in your mind for a feature, a new game whatsoever, and go and get some input. And that's basically what the UX designer does. Where you go out there, you try to probe what you have in written, or you just like have interviews or focus groups, or whatever it is, and then bring that back and try to make some sort of informed decision of where to move your product next. But it's an absolutely fantastic job because you get to do a lot of different things.
No, I totally agree. And I mean, one thing in my mind is that a lot of the default expectation of what your role is about the buttons and where the buttons should go on the screen. and that's exactly the laughter I give. It's like, no, and it's not even. I mean, I will obviously when I'm when I've been consulting on a game, my primary interest is in the user journey, the first time user experience flow, and so I think this is kind of like an example. I think you're closer to thinking about the journey of the player through the game than you are in terms of deciding where the buttons go. Is that a fair assessment?
Let's cut our UI UX designers a bit of slack here, because when UX is easily confused with, well, UI equals UX, because button go there, button red is bad, button green is good, at least in our hemisphere. I like to explain this to new starters in our company, or in general, when I talk to my dad and try to explain to my dad what I'm doing, that the buttons and the text and all of that, everything that is on screen, the vibration of your controller, everything that communicates between the game and the user, is also to a degree user experience, right? If you can't read the text on the screen because you're sitting on a sofa 3 meters away from your plasma TV and the text is too small, that's bad user experience. As a interface designer, you need to have these things in mind. You need to think about vision impairment, color blindness. You need to think about sequencing. How many assets need to be on the screen before it becomes confusing when you down in choice overload and whatnot. So there's definitely a UX part in creating screens, and that's also part of my background. Like I started as as a UI designer in the beginning, so game making, doing a lot of 3D and level design and whatnot. But ultimately, my personal conclusion was that I can be of most benefit for anyone if I leave these parts behind and actually go out there and bring the player into, not figuratively, but bring the player into our meeting sessions and have some sort of the player voice in the room. And that's much more impactful for me than just talking about does this button work.
Exactly, and I think there's something about game feel in particular, the aspect of that. You mentioned it, the buzzing that happens at the right time, the audio that happens, the haptics of the experience, and that haptics isn't just in the classical sense of that phrase. It's the satisfaction of the action to deliver. To me, my mind, one of the classic examples of that is the way that you unbox a reward. That unboxing process in the game might not itself have a game mechanic element to it, but the impact of the game mechanic is magnified if you get that feel correct. Is that the sort of thing we're talking about here?
I think yes, we are. Of course, when opening a reward or when entering a new level or whatever, that gets your heart racing and be excited about, okay, I found this interesting thing, or I unlocked a specific skill or whatnot. I think at the bottom line, when you want to start condensing it down, because it needs to have particle effects and needs to look interesting, and depending on the game that you're building, and it has to make sense in context of play. You unlock a new car in your racing game only makes sense if you are asked to race around, right? So that does something. But if you go all the way down at the bottom, I think it's about feedback, and it always comes back to a closed feedback loop. So you do something, the system reacts, the system tells you what has happened, you understand what the system is trying to tell you, and based on that, you adjust your next goal. Like the super easy principle of action, but that's what this present box, for instance, does for you. Like you have a mental model of there are these boxes in the game. They are rare. Getting them is a lot of work, and I need to get lucky, and maybe I can improve my luck a little bit. And then you're being rewarded with this box, and now you go through this process of opening it and having it celebrated, and finally, a long, nice payoff for all the work that I did. And I get something that brings me forward in the game.
And I think this is where it's so important to get the designer, the game mechanic designer, to work really closely with the UX person. And okay, in indies they can sometimes pull it off, but there's something about the ability of a good quality UX person that understands the player experience and that is then testing it and providing data. We'll get to the testing and data bit in a second, but I'm thinking about particularly the first time user experience flow, that first encounter between the difference between understanding for the player how to play the game, but I think just as importantly where the game fits into their daily routine. I think one of the mistakes we often make when we're level designers or we're gameplay designers is we go mechanically. We're going to introduce this mechanic, that mechanic. We're going to tell you what to do. We're going to make you do these things. And I think only when you get an experiential designer in can you see, oh, hang on a minute, no, that doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel natural. How do we know? Well, because we asked people. We've got their experience. We've got their view on what it feels like. We know that they're thinking when you put this pop-up up, they're not reading it, and therefore when they go and do the action, they're not going to do it. But if we say highlight this particular part of the screen at this particular moment, just before they act, they're likely to do it instinctively. Am I making sense? That kind of like combination of designer and UX person making a difference.
Yeah, it does. But we touched on quite some things here right now. So onboarding experience, right? And the context in which you sit down and start playing your game, which is super important. And to be perfectly honest, of course, it's not just UX designer. There's competitive research. There's analytics. There's let's say you make another match 3 type of game, then you have already so much data about when people use match 3, who your competition is, that you will probably have to put a lot of extra effort in to convince someone to use this game instead of something else. So there's a big bunch around that. But where the UX part is interesting, I think that's working in the industry for a long time, you really think I know everything about my game and I know exactly how people will play it. So they will sit down and they will have some coffee and then they're going to play a session of 20 minutes, Wordle or whatnot.
Yeah.
And once you
yeah,
sit
so
down and talk to them, right, you might get something like, of course not. Of course not. I'm doing that while I watch Netflix or something, or in between. But not even waiting for the bus. No one waits for the bus and plays games anymore. You probably do that in, I don't know. Let's come up with something.
on the toilet.
On the yeah, sure. You're on the toilet. So these things are super important. And if someone is skilled enough to tap into this potential, right? Like to get you this, like, of course I only play in this moment. You're like, widen your horizon. Of, okay, will I change my game just because you're on the toilet? Probably not. But I know that your session length has like a natural limit when you have to get up again, right? So there's,
what's nice though is that natural limit, particularly on a mobile phone game, is that it happens to match the willingness, my expectation of being interrupted. So my expectation of being interrupted, whether I'm on the loo, whether I'm on the bus, or more likely I'm taking that moment out for myself in my own space. I know I've got to go back to work. I need a bit of private me time. Those moments are typically a fairly similar, frequency. I worked out about 90 seconds is the average median period of time that people are willing to not have to think about being interrupted. Now that's a very finger in the air guesswork, but that's across multiple games, across multiple eras of gaming, and very specific to mobile.
Yeah. Plus, you have a device in your hand that is made to interrupt you. There
Exactly.
can be constantly push notifications. Someone liked something on Pinterest that you have liked. So, sitting down and taking out some time, I think that's natural. Like back in the days when we were going to go to the theater, you take out 90 minutes to watch a movie, or more or less. When I'm a passionate gamer myself. When I sit down and I decide, okay, tonight it's time for gaming. Like I have this new game and I want to try it out. I'll set aside like 4 hours or something, and will afterwards make a somehow decision. Maybe sometimes long, sometimes less decision. Do I even continue? Right. So yes, take some time aside. 90 seconds is super interesting, though. I think I'll look into our data if there's something around 90 seconds for me as well. So look at that. I learned something interesting here.
No, I'm just saying these are the things that I find useful to bear in mind. And again, why do I come up with that? Well, because I actually studied it. I actually got analysis done through working with UX people. What a surprise! And obviously, there's different kinds of proof that we get. And I think, maybe not everybody understands the importance of this, but I think what's different about a designer will build something, a game designer will prototype something, will paper prototype sometimes, we'll try things out, we'll put it out there, we'll get people to play it, and then we'll see if it sticks. And there's a lot of play testing going on. So we're already thinking about proof of what we're doing. But I think what's really interesting is that when you start getting, when you work with expert UX people, they're actually bringing data to the party. So do you want to talk a little bit about how you approach qualifying your feedback to the team?
Sure. It also depends on what you're trying to inform the team about. Right? So you get a let's say we have a brand new game concept and we think it's going to be a great addition to the game because of this and that, right? So once you have this on the table and the question is in which direction should this new or feature or whatnot go, you would probably sit down, get yourself a focus group, and then openly talk about, hey, not directly asking, do you like this or you do not like this, and how would you want it? Tell me, or something like that. More of a you sit down and have a I think I call them open interview sessions, where you don't even come up with the topic. Just sit down, collect your people, and then talk about, hey, so where are you in the game currently, or what's the last thing that you remember that happened in the story, or what are you looking forward to achieve next, and what was pissing you off, and things like that. And so slowly but steady, you then move into, okay, so you're doing this thing, and why is it so satisfying to you, and would that be I like to collect things, someone might say. Like, I just feel great when I have every box ticked in the things I need to collect, which we're like, okay, we can put that into this persona of this specific player behavior, and then see if that maps with what we want to do in this feature. And that is just the interview part, right? There's of course how many people that do this are already catered to by the game. If you're playing a sword fighting game and I'm going to introduce 5 more swords while you already have 50 swords, might not be so great.
Net utility of extra sword equals, yeah.
So, but that's the thing, right? Like you would invite your players that do sword fighting, and you ask them about how great it is to wield swords around, right? And maybe one person will say, it's sort of, I'm not really the sword type of guy, but the game is fun. And then you would have something interesting, because suddenly you realize I'm only catering to sword people. Oh my goodness. And I thought that's why they're in my game. The only reason they're here for is sword fighting. But then this person says, I love the game, but sword fighting, I wish there was some, I don't know, crafting, which I saw in a different game. And then you get like an interesting nuance to your game concept. And when then they show up with, so we have a new concept about more swords, we're like, yep, players love swords, great. And there's an interesting opportunity to look into alternative models, maybe like crafting.
Absolutely.
Then you unbox a complete new path, maybe, if you want, if that makes sense for the game.
And that could be an additive layer, but it obviously, we need to make sure it's additive and not separative.
Yeah, and also super important, because you said as a game designer, you think about the systems in the game. It's not like you go out there to a player not knowing what you want to do, and then just take whatever they say for granted and be like, well, they asked for faster horses, so they're going to get faster horses, right? You need to, of course, always keep the lid on. And that's where then, surveys and
I love that reference. In case other people don't know what that reference is, it's because Henry Ford said if you went out and asked customers what they want, before they knew about cars, they would say faster horses. Mm-hmm. And a great reference. And I think it's a perfect, there's a lot of references like that, I think, apply to this. So, for me, I think there are multiple ways that we can collect this information. You've talked about kind of asking players, and that can be done online, it can be done in surveys, it can be done with other things, but it can also be done in person, or it can be done using these third-party platforms. Do you want to talk a little bit about the kinds of techniques where, what are you doing? Are you just like, here's a game and that's it? how are you actually checking?
Okay,
I'm going to quote another source before we dive into it, which is Dr. House from the TV show, where he famously says everybody lies. I'm a big believer in, when testing, that everybody lies.
Everybody lies, and especially people who like you will lie to you. So you need to dig through these things. Techniques. Okay, so. First and foremost, you want to have experts around you. Like, you want to have expert designers that know about the things that you're building. You want to have expert artists and so on. So you want to have a good team that already by themselves know what type of thing they're working on. You want to have an informed baseline here. When you go out there and let's just say you go and ask your mom if your new game is fun, and you're just asking that question, she's going to lie to you, and she's going to say, of course it's fun. I love it, Oscar. Great. Wow. You should, do more of that. And then you spend all your money on building this game, and then you fall flat on your nose because no one is playing this thing. Yeah. There's specific interviewing techniques to prevent these things, but that's something. You can always go out there and probe one person if you are, learn a little bit of how to ask questions that are not instantly answered with yes, as long as you're happy now, and just leave me alone. The whole thing about focus groups is like also in person. You can have group interviews with up to 6-7 people. It's super stressful at that point though, because you also have to orchestrate like who talks, and then make sure that people don't pollinate each other with ideas. Like one person will say, oh, I love A so much and B not, and then the whole rest will like, well, okay, so proof A is better, and no one will give you a different opportunity at that point. Of course, we have prototype building. You can go through concept tests, just showing someone a picture of. You don't want to ask, do you like what you see, but you want to show them pictures like, what type of feeling does this evoke in you? So a nice landscape, we're like, I think about traveling, and not do you like trees, right? So that's a part. you can set up a false advertisement. Well, not really false advertisement, but you can plant advertisement, have advertisement tested. Does this click? Is this headline something that people catch attention? Is your icon design great? But that's not the answer that you're looking for.
And the hyper casual industry, when that was a thing,
Yeah.
mastered that. And I think that there's a lot of lessons about the way they operated
The
to be
open
taken from
mouth,
it.
yes.
But don't get me wrong, there were some bad things. Don't get me wrong. The fake ads, arguably not great because it set up false impressions. But actually, a lot of what people called fake ads were actually mini games inside other games, or often became new games.
They
For
had to
me,
legally.
yeah, well, I think rightly so because you don't want to kind of force it. But when you're putting out a game and you're trying to say, is this a game I can develop? You're not faking. You're actually saying this is a game I'm working on. But you have to be upfront. I think you miss so much opportunity to build a community if you're not upfront. If you don't have a place for that ad to land and say this is a game we're considering making.
It depends on what you want to do.
Yeah.
Maybe to a degree. If you are already working with a strong IP,
Yeah.
and you already have an established fan base, you want to keep your fans happy and give to them.
Very
They
different,
give to
yeah.
you everything great. If you
100%.
believe you can go for a quick buck by making some piece of software and then just hope for the best, then good luck. It's probably not going to work, right? Call it
But I think
prevail.
that's the thing is that the quick buck was the problem with the hyper casual industry is that do you not know what this industry is? If you think you can get a quick buck, there are so many better, easier ways to do. I say better. There are so many other ways to do it. The game industry is all about experiential content. Why would you waste your time when there are other ways you could cheat people? Don't
And in
cheat
times like
people.
where making a game becomes expensive and the
Yeah.
market is fierce and there's like 50
100%.
new games every minute on the App Store, for instance, or just check Steam how many new cool games, and sometimes just random show up, and you have to make a choice where you're going to put your
Yeah.
money at. At that
Yeah.
point, when you invest into research early, where you test your prototype and your concepts and your advertisement before even starting to develop something, you're going to have like a very nice information about is this the right direction that I'm going towards.
Yep. Yeah, totally. And I think that's the crux of it. It's understanding and framing the work you're doing and that doing it authentically is where you're going to get the best answers.
Yeah, that and get it out there.
Yeah, get it out there.
There's a tendency, and I fall for this also, where you're sort of maybe you know that this weird feeling of I really don't want to know the truth because I believe it's good and I just want to hear nice things.
It's my game, God.
Yeah. Like, I pour so much of my heart blood into this.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, but breathe. You need to go through this process, and we're humans, right? That's always hard, and that's why it's good to have UX designer because ultimately I don't really care that much. Sometimes we even spin it this way. Sometimes the feature that I'm working on, I'm asking a colleague UX designer to do the interviews for me because they can really distance themselves. And then I watch the recording afterwards to see the reactions and write down what players had to say. And they start with the sentence, hey, my colleague asked me to test this. I have absolutely no idea what's going on here. So we're in this together and we're going to look at this and you tell me what you see. No.
I would always hire a third party wherever possible to do those kinds of things because my presence in the room, no matter how unintended, exerts a bias. You can measure it. You can
normal.
actually.
It's okay. Yeah. Like that's how it works. I've been in interviews with players, long time ago, working on a different title, and there was some sort of item that could be bought with the in-game currency, and out of the blue, the game designer who I'm sitting in with says, "So how much would you be willing to pay for this? Like if it was real money?" And I'm just like turning around, like, "What are you doing?" And so the player sits there and says, "I don't know, $5, and then he's like, how about $7? Would you? And starts bargaining, right? And then you sit there like, that's yeah, sure, but you can't do anything with this. But it's so
Yeah.
normal because you
Yeah.
want to have these questions answered, and you look for a
I've
possible.
actually done that technique in a focus group intentionally, and it can work in focus groups. But what you're doing is it has to be independent. It has to be purposeful around the discussion about price strategy. It completely blows away any other information about what's going on, and it's also going to end up wrong. It's more going to give you an indication of sensitivity to price than actual numbers.
Yeah, yeah, and also in the context, right? What
Yeah,
if you set up just one item and put a price on,
yeah,
maybe it's part of a popcorn pricing setup or something. We have a
yeah,
decoy in there that changes everything again.
totally.
Is it a rare item? Does it have like a now 80% off and was more expensive
Yeah.
prior to that? Like that's these questions. That's a whole own box of pricing
Totally.
design.
But again, what we're doing here, and I think this is really important to highlight, is the importance and value of qualitative information. And I don't know about you, but
Yeah.
for me, I use that to work out what the scaled analytics, the quantitative analytics needs to be asking.
You need
So,
to combine them though, right? It's
and you got to
important that
combine them. Exactly my point. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, if you have quality feedback only, then you can directly ask about, let's say, we see a certain behavior, right?
Yeah,
Let's say our game is always played for 1.5 minutes at a specific time, and we think, oh yeah, that's some sort of habitation because someone sits on the toilet and now plays this game, and
yeah,
like, well, that's the spike. But you do not get any insights about why play a game when you're in the toilet. Wouldn't you want
yeah,
to, get off the toilet as fast as possible? So you want to sit down and go through understanding what this behavior is. So on one hand, you get like with a big survey or something, or just reading out the data of your game, you get a good idea of where do we see specific behavior. But if you want to understand what motivates this behavior, you need to go out there and ask people. And sometimes this gets confused, right? You ask 5 players about your new feature, and all 5 of them give you thumbs up, and then you go to your product manager and be like, okay, 100% good, let's go, ship it live, right?
yeah.
And it falls flat because it's not a representative figure asking 5 people, but it gives you a good idea of
Yeah.
where they're coming from and how they're feeling about what they're doing in your game.
I mean, for me, I'm always thinking about qualitative giving me the questions I should ask at scale, but also the why. Whereas quantitative gives me a sense of confidence of the level and extent of that particular opinion. But of course, you got to write your surveys correctly to be able to get the right information out of those things. Yeah,
There's a whole bucket of survey
yeah,
design as well. So, and you ask good questions. I think that's one of the fascinating parts of working with humans, both in your team but also as a customer,
yeah,
and realizing how you yourself quickly fall for your own biases, how the team is asking biased questions, how players or users will lie to you, not
yeah,
because of bad intent, but because they want to show you that
yeah,
they understood, and this it's all a nice environment, but it
yeah.
can easily lead into bias.
And it's an interesting tension I find because I'm a big fan of the NPS test. And the reason I like that is because it follows some very good discipline in terms of question writing, where you ask a question which sets a frame and then you change the frame in order to ensure you get the correct, the accurate answer rather than the presumed answer. And I think this is a technique that's often used in survey design. The idea of basically asking the same question different ways to ensure that whether the answer is consistent rather than
Mm.
just someone ticking the particular box. And the NPS score, particularly because it says, did you like this game? And the answer is usually yes, because they don't want to upset you. Secondly, you ask them, would you play it again? And again, you're given the opportunity to vent the kind of like the good part of their moral part where they want to tell you, well, no, I wouldn't. But that's because they want to tell you the honest truth. And sometimes they can be trying to be overly honest in the sense of they don't want you to think that you want to give you a hard answer because they think that's helping you. Or they'll give you a soft answer again. And again, not because it's the actual answer, but because it's the way they think they're helping you.
Yeah,
But
and
it's
what
the
they remember.
third question. It's the third question where they say, would you recommend to a friend?
Ah,
And the reason I love that so much is because it's no longer about you, as in, would I tell you something? I'm now putting myself as the recipient of the question in my own shoes to somebody where I've got a consequence.
you have suddenly
Now,
responsibility.
yes, I have a responsibility.
Yeah.
So now I am much, much more likely to answer accurately and authentically. And the answer isn't whether they'd recommend to people. That's not what the question's telling us. It's telling us how truthfully they actually enjoyed that experience.
Yeah, without lying to you, right?
Yeah,
Telling you that
exactly.
everything is fine. When we work with Playtest Cloud,
Mm.
great, great people to, and also fantastic researchers there and good
Yeah,
friends.
very much so.
And there's always the opportunity to throw in a survey after a playtest session.
Yeah.
So you build a prototype or something, hand it out, and of course, always a
And
couple of
they build the NPS test into their surveys as well, which I like.
that's yeah. You can help. Sure.
Yeah. No, they do automatically. It's a default part of their question survey. I've used Playtest Scout loads of times. I also use Antidote. There are others out there, but I love
Sure.
the fact that I don't have to enter in the the NPS test questions. They're already there.
I still sneak in a not sneak in. I actually put in the question of, if this was not a playtest, would
Yeah.
you continue playing?
That's a nice
And
question.
and that's because you watch them stumble through your prototype. It's not a final game. It has
Yeah.
like rough edges here and there. Um, they they know that they're being paid for this. They have
Yeah.
to play for the given time, so they're just going to go through this thing. But if you put that, whatever they say, in context of, if this wasn't, would you continue playing? And you get like just a raving absolutely yes, that's weird, because probably lying to me again. If you give like a hard no, absolutely not, I can at least work with that. Like, well, you just didn't enjoy it, might not be the right product for you yet.
100%.
But if it's somewhere in the middle, somewhere of I could, maybe, I don't want to completely rule it out or completely say yes, that is great, because we already have you at a point where I could now shape the experience and your time in this game in a way that it really catches your interest.
Yeah.
So,
No,
so
totally.
that's and as you said, right, you ask a question, but your intention is a different one.
Precisely. And what I love about particularly tools like Playtest Cloud, Antidote, and all the others is they record the playtest.
Yeah.
So I'm watching the screen that you had as a player. I'm hearing you speaking as you're playing. I'm
see what
seeing
you're
the
tapping
response
on.
time. I'm seeing what you're tapping on. Exactly. And for those who don't know, Playtest Cloud tends towards the mobile experience, whereas Antidote is wider than that. You get slightly different. You don't always get the video and the audio with Antidote. I think you get the screen audio, but you don't necessarily get the player audio with Antidote. I can't remember. It may have changed since I last used it. But the point is, you're getting a lot of visceral feedback of a person. What I love about it is that these are people who are actually recruited, and they don't know they're being recruited for your game. So they have no bias towards your game, even though, as you rightly say, they're being paid. The information is generally fairly consistent. And I find that they're not overly expert players. They're much more mainstream players that you might have recruited if you tried to do it directly.
It depends on how you screen them. I say it depends on a lot. So as a UX designer, you will always say it depends. Right?
It depends, yeah.
You can.
Whereas as a designer, I say it's just this.
Small change.
Yeah.
just one more sprint. When you you can probe for players. You can recruit them. You can bring your own players if you already have them.
Yeah, you can.
And ask them to then participate via services like Playtest Cloud. What's really, really interesting is what you get in. It's like fishing. Like, you don't really know what you're gonna catch. You're on to something specific, but maybe you're gonna get a shoe, and maybe you're gonna pull out a treasure chest, and maybe it's gonna be a fish that grants you wishes.
And sometimes you can see that there's something not right about that player, and you can reject them, and you'll get a replacement.
Sure,
and you have to be careful about that, because that's where your bias can come in. But at least they're being recruited by Playtest Cloud or Antidote, whatever the company is, not by me, which is creating at least one layer of barrier to mitigate the bias to some extent.
There's something I want to throw in here, because we're not testing the player, right? We're testing our designs, which is also like
Precisely.
one of the golden rules.
Yeah.
And of course you can reject one of these playtests, and not all playtests are valuable. Even if we sit down in a focus group, not everything that is being said is like great and can be used afterwards. That's why you have more than just one person that you're testing with, right?
I have a favorite story about focus groups.
I'll let you. Just in a second. I need to get this one out,
okay.
because the only recordings that I would reject is where technically something fails, like the audio is not recorded, or tab doesn't work, or the player starts the screen, and stuff like that. That's reality, right? That happens. They start the game, and there's a big begin new adventure button or something, and then they talk 20 minutes about the design of the background screen and how the leaves are falling down, and you're like, you're being asked to play this game, and not 20 minutes give me a long monologue about that leaves don't fall with this specific type of physics. So that's something that you would probably then reject but someone being furious, or someone being on the toilet, which is also something that I had in the past, that's all has value in the context.
It does, and I'll give you the focus group example. So those who don't know,
I want to hear the focus group story of yours.
Yes, yeah, exactly. I'm gonna give you this one. So for those who don't know, focus group tends to be a group of invited people who come into a space, and then they are presented on group a particular scenario. In this case, I'm going back into the early days of mobile 3G, where we were showing off our new phones, which look terrible, by the way, and we were showing off video calling for the first time. Bear in mind, we're in a lab. We're in a lab situation where everything works perfectly. And we have all the devices, and we show people on your mobile phone, here's a flip phone. And in fact, I think I've actually got the flip phone, the very flip phone that we were using. This thing here, this thing here, we were doing this massive brick of a flip phone, 2001, I think it was. We were showing video calling on this thing.
Wow.
And it works perfectly. And everybody is so impressed. They're so excited. Video calling, it's going to be the future. This is the primary thing we're going to launch on. And of course, you forget that in the real world, we don't have our network working everywhere. In the real world, it's really weird looking at your boss's eyes for 30 minutes as you do your weekly update with him. By the way, I had to do that every single week. When you're sitting there and you haven't got used to this era we're at now, where video calling is normalized. Remember, that's 25 years ago. It was a complete disaster. And we had to we tried offers like, here, get 2 phones for 1. But is the person you're trying to video call ready to receive a video call on demand in the street? At that time, it was inconceivable. And we had to completely redo all of our launch campaign immediately after we launched as a direct result of that misunderstanding of what the focus group was telling us.
So the learning here is that while you're in the setup in the lab and have everything perfectly fine, you're not really testing the accessibility and usability of it. You're testing the vision that you're having of being able to do these things, and it's a proof of concept, if you will, that the system in itself works like your game. And then what you want to do is give 20 people these phones and have them walk around through their daily life, and maybe have it's not applicable, but have a diary of like, I'm doing this, and right now I'm actually doing this call, and record them like that.
And look at us now. We're all using video calling on a regular basis, but 25 years ago, it was way too early.
Well, you had a vision there.
Yeah, so. But the vision was oddly, that focus group says that the vision was correct, but the application was wrong. But again, this is the kind of problem I think we have with any usability testing process, is knowing what question we're asking.
Yeah, and in what context? Again, exactly. Right? Because if everyone would be living in a lab, perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But we're not in the lab.
Now,
So you want to
where
have
do
like a
you
realistic environment.
exactly? Where do you sit in the context of biometrics with this kind of testing? What's your view on that?
So yeah, biometric studies, and for people that might not know, that's the moment when you sit in the lab and we can technically record your pupils if they widen, and we can have your sweat glances measured, and we can have your heartbeat measured. Then also a heartbeat and pulse doesn't necessarily make sense for gaming, but pupils and where you're looking at, like
Where you're
these
looking at, yeah.
things. Yes, it's a little camera that sits on your screen, and it looks at you and it just checks where are you looking at, which can be insanely good for you to understand why stuff does not work. So that's
Yeah.
type of biometric study. I think heat maps and anything, and a heat map would be where you're looking at. So
Yeah.
if this would have been a heat map thingy, probably there was a big colorful blob on your side of the screen because I'm looking at you while talking to you.
Same here. Mine's
And
on the other side.
it looks fascinating if you put it into a presentation, and then you have like a company, blah, and we're like, well, we tested this thing, and here's a biometric study, and people are like, ooh, that's good science. But the thing that these nuances, like let's say you have a situation on your, let's come up with a feature real quick. You're building a collection, something. You're out there in this world and you're collecting things, and from time to time you find something that is rare, and it goes into like a shelf, and then it sits there. And in addition, you can merge these things, but no one does. No one merges them. It just never happens. The data shows people collect stuff, but no one merges it. And you could sit down. Well, let's make an A/B test where there's like like it's merge season. You get double the blah 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 whatnot. You can sit down in a focus group and you probably hear something like, I didn't even know that this exists. I didn't even know that you can merge stuff. And then you can tell your UI artist, make a big pointy arrow on that button so that people click it. When you go into a biometric study and do the eye tracking with that, what you could see is everyone is focusing on one specific thing. Like your button might be up here, but the whole focus is down here. And then you learn, the focus is down here because that's where the stats are from the things that you collect. And people are just reading this. And the whole screen turns into, it is not really a collection. It's more of a diary about the stuff that I found. And so
or it just might be keeping score.
Yes. So it's not because your feature idea is bad. It's because people use it for something else.
Precisely.
And they won't tell you. Like no one sits down and, well, maybe someone sits down. I don't want to speak in absolutes here, but not really anyone sits down in a focus group and tells you, hey, Oscar, so this thing that you built, I'm using it in a very specific way because that's how I want to play your game.
Yeah.
They're not. They wanna
No.
That's where biometric is.
I completely get. I feel similarly. I mean, I think there's an example where I've seen it used beautifully, and that's when you're looking at a screen that's got ads on it, because you can actually see, it's particularly banner ads. There was fantastic analysis done on websites with banner ads, and basically users very quickly stopped looking at where the ads were. They literally just stopped. They stopped ever moving their eyes back to where there was ads, and so you knew the ads just weren't working.
Yeah, you can make him bigger, and then they're even more annoying, right?
Yeah.
But no one will look at it.
And no one will look at it. And I think that's an example of a very useful use of that kind of eye tracking style methodology. I do think in certain horror games, it's really interesting to see if you can get the impact. But it's working out where the moments happen. And typically, all you're getting is jump scares. And anyone who understands horror knows that jump scares are the lazy way to do it. It's the build of... Yeah, it's the build of impending doom that makes it interesting and compelling, I would argue.
When I had the first VR experience that was a reasonable VR experience, not a test for VR works or it doesn't work, like in your lab.
Yeah.
It was a very, very simple simulation, I think, where all that you did was go downstairs deeper and deeper and deeper in a spiraling tunnel. And the audio would change, and you would hear echoes and whatnot. The graphics were pretty bad because it was 12 years ago or something. But it made me feel so claustrophobic and like you don't even need a jump scare in this sense.
No.
Biometric study at that point. I don't know what you're looking for, but your heart rate would have probably gone up. But what do you do with this then afterwards,
But what
right?
do you do with this? Exactly.
Exactly.
Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, I've Graham when he was doing play research, and David Tisserand, a mutual friend of ours, who set up the user labs at PlayStation when I was still there, who I actually knew back in the day when he was working at Orange. Um, Fantastic people doing amazing stuff in terms of understanding what's possible. But I've given up using that lab research because I find using an online platform like a Playtest Cloud or an Antidote or the various others that are out there, I find that much more useful because I can do it quickly, I can do it rapidly, I can get that data, I can do it independent of my interaction. It's just so much more cost effective. And the
Also that.
net benefit of the additional level of data minus the bias that's created by being in lab conditions,
Mhm.
I
You
don't
said
find
something
is
very
worthwhile.
important here, that the idea is research might be expensive, right? Oh my God, if I rent out a lab, and I've been in a lab too, that
Yeah.
these things are expensive,
Mm.
make no doubt. And having a biometric study where there's a camera set up and looking at your eyes, players that don't feel overly well in this situation, so you're already muddying down
Yeah.
what you're actually trying to find.
And they know they're there to be tested.
Yeah.
So
And,
they act
and
accordingly.
20 times. We're not
Yeah.
testing you, we're testing the product. You're
Yeah.
always also going to feel tested in this setup. So,
Yeah.
yeah, this quick and dirty way of use an online, it's not dirty, but the quick version of I have just those small concept tests, I'm going to get it out there and get some
Yeah.
feedback. What's for instance, if you're an indie developer, there was a beautiful talk at Gamescom, I think, beginning of middle of last year, yeah, last year, about how to use itch.io with your rough ideas for a game, just a MVP minus, and you throw them in itch.io and see what people have to say. And if you get like numbers, you're probably onto something. And just like learning about what type of game you're making for someone else before you start pouring money and your weekends into it is that's money well invested for yourself.
No,
So
totally.
yeah, not everyone has to go into a lab, but you want to a learn about good questions, have questions on your mind, not just go into a focus group with like, well, let's go into a focus group or go into a lab and let's see what happens. But you want to have an answer that is at the end directed somehow into your progress, and do that early.
Exactly. But I think it doesn't end there. And I think the true is that we often, and this isn't a UX person problem, this is a rest of the company problem. It's once we've got the information, we need to act on it. And I think there's two ways we need to act on it. We need to get the telemetry to track what actual players are doing. Now we've got some questions to ask because we've seen what these observed players have done. We can try to apply that to the telemetry data, see what's actually going on at scale. Is this really a big problem or not? But also, we need to adapt the game. We actually need to respond and adapt the game rapidly.
And here you go, because this is also so important.
Yeah,
People approach me and ask, "Oh, can we do a prototype on something? And can we do some research? And already come with you should do a focus group on this, and you should do a
yeah,
something on that." I'm like, well, we can do all of these things, but
yeah,
what's the question are you trying to answer? And like, well, I want to know if the game is fun. And then the next one is, what if the research shows that it's not fun? Will you act on it?
absolutely,
Because if I just say
absolutely.
yes, everything is fine, you're confirmed, and then you move on. But what if your beliefs are contradicted? Then, like,
Exactly.
would you and could you even do something? Because you might then say, oh, if that happens, there's nothing we can do because release date is in 2 weeks, and I just need to have like a nice presentation for stakeholders.
Yeah,
Something like that could be reality, right?
yeah. And but why? But I mean, it's just such a waste, and you're wasting everybody's time and your money in. I mean, I actually think that one of the things that I've struggled with is reacting fast enough. I've discovered in my use of telemetry and kind of this kind of playtest type process, it's very easy for you to take another month or so, maybe 2 months to get the next thing out, by which time the taste, the trends, the experiences may have moved on.
Yes,
And
yes.
the value of that information is diminished by the distance in time.
And there are ways for you to speed up. Like you do not have to have a fantastic polished version out there. I've been doing concept tests with stuff that I drew on a piece of paper
Yeah.
based on what I collected in a meeting. So like, yeah, it's probably going to be something like this. And then you sit like, okay, this is the thing that we're about to build, and then just have a conversation about it, right? You don't have to get it fully fleshed out. You can start testing super early, just with ideas, with a scribbled up concept or a competitor game. If you already know I'm going to go for, let's stick to the match 3 thing, to take another match 3 game and have that tested, and then ask your questions based on that. It's fast, it's easy. The turnaround is a couple of days.
It's really amazing how quick this has become, and the access to those platforms, I think, has transformed the potential for even small companies. I tend to pick very small groups, some like 6, maybe 4 to 6 sometimes. I'd rather have 8 if I can, but I'm not looking for statistical significance for these kinds of tests.
Well, 8 people is stressful. I had fantastic focus groups with just 3 people in the room, where everyone had enough time, because you also have to orchestrate like who speaks if you're doing this in a recording, right? Like that, right? Oh, and we didn't even touch on AI, because with AI tools, you do not have to. If you have a cool idea, it takes a couple of prompts, and you can theoretically already generate a preview, something clickable in HTML. You can come up with something, and this something can be tested, right? It's fantastic. We're living in a great age for lean prototyping at the moment.
And I can't wait to see what you can do when you start getting AI prompted UX research. I think it'd be interesting. Now, I'm not trying to add in another argument about the wrongs and AI replacing people's jobs. That's not a thing I'm suggesting in any way, shape, or form. But I am finding use in the tools for doing all sorts of things to make my role more effective. I wonder what the AI equivalent of good use would be in this context.
For UX, and at least for me, and right, like that's the way that I'm working. It's a tool, and the tool allows me to visualize things that the design team wants to see in reality. Because written word, nice, picture, nice, but something that you can actually click through, and then you can build something in Unity directly, build something in Figma. But all of that eats easily half a day. But a couple of prompts, and you have something to click on, it's easier to talk about that. Like it's a tool. It's not replacing the job in this case. It allows you to tighten up communication a little bit, reduce confusion, and maybe sometimes even come up with happy little accidents that people like maybe love, because you thought, I added a nice little title to this one feature that I'm building. Like, it helps so much to have a title. Why didn't we have that prior to that? So it's we can talk about AI for hours again.
And again, just an example. A friend of mine is building an AI that acts as a human-like tester. And what would that have as a role to play in us uncovering what questions we should ask real players versus what questions we should ask, at scale with telemetry? I think broadening the tools we have can help us make better experiences for players.
Yeah, but still, as with a focus group, still you want to be aware that just one source of truth shouldn't be enough to then base your design on. So yes, build yourself a model, feed all the information you have from your players, go through all Reddit posts where they talk about your game.
So Holger, let's with that in mind, is there one thing you would like the audience listener to take away from this conversation?
Sure. If there's one thing that you want to take away, and one thing that speaks about UX as much as possible, then I would say do not design in vacuum, right? You can't sit in a room and work on something for very, very long and then consider it done. It's expensive. It takes energy from you. So my advice is go out there as soon as possible, eat the biggest frog first. It might hurt when you get the first pushback against your ideas and your baby and your darling, but with every pushback you grow and you're going to build a better product in the long run. So just get out of your comfort zone and show people what you're working on, right? There's this weird feeling of sense of pride and of ownership, and then it has to be as polished as possible before you show it something. Like really want to present parts of you. It's a very vulnerable moment, but you have to overcome this, and you're going to build a better product with that mindset.
I totally agree. And I think the other thing in my head is that you actually save money by doing it. Because if you learn early what's wrong with the experience or what could be better, it stops you making the mistake deeper and more costly to fix later.
Exactly. It's easier to go back and fix something when you're not that down in the rabbit hole.
Exactly. The earlier you can steer your course correction, the less expensive it is to make you fix your mistakes.
Amen.
And with that in mind, Holger, thank you so much for being part of this. Did you enjoy that? What has made you think differently about what UX means and how testing is important to your process? If you have, then like, subscribe, share, talk about it. Let's discussing it. And at the end of the day, we're in this situation where we're trying to make the best possible player experience. And how can we do that if we're not paying attention to what the player needs? Thank you very much. And thank you, Holger. And we'll be back next time. We'll be talking about, all the elements of the things that you need to know when you're trying to make the best possible games. And as I know, I'm trying to learn everything that's possible about the making of games. So let's do more of that. Thank you very much.